Welcome back to Do You DADU, the podcast where we explore what's possible in your own backyard. I'm Shakiba, a lead architect with SC Design Build. Today we are talking about sustainability, but not only solar panels, certifications, or high tech systems. We want to look at what sustainability really means when you are designing and building a smaller home like an ADU or DADU. This episode is about building a home that feels comfortable today, costs less to operate, and continues to perform well for many years. I'm joined by Suzanne Czar, founder of SC Design Build, and Jan Pillinger, an architect and certified passive house consultant with extensive experience in sustainable and high performance design. Suzanne and Jan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good.
Thank you. Jan, could you please introduce yourself for our listeners?
I'm a principal with Studio E Architecture in Eugene, and we design projects up and down the West Coast. And as a passive house consultant, I often do consulting with various other architects on their projects with the aim of achieving higher energy efficiency, more sustainability, or gathering data on the performance of their buildings. And that's actually how I met Suzanne Czar on a project that she was designing, and she hired us as a consultant to her project.
I would like to start with what sustainability really means. Jan, when we talk about sustainability in residential design, what should homeowners be thinking about beyond solar panels, products, or certifications?
For me, sustainability means number one, providing a really, really healthy indoor environment. Number two would be to achieve a very high energy efficiency so as to reduce the costs to the homeowner, to reduce our impact on the environment, because energy production requires has impacts on the environment. Thirdly, it's also to use potentially, if we can afford to go there, to have materials that are recyclable, that are natural based, come from nature more than having been gone through a big manufacturing process. So that's sort of where I see as sustainability. With all those aspects, indoor comfort is, for me, a sustainable aspect. Beauty is a sustainable aspect. It's very important. I think it makes us feel better. And then functionality, in other words, using as much of the resources we're putting into this building as efficiently as possible, so every square foot is well used, every material is well used. We reduce waste during construction. Those are all aspects of sustainability for me.
Jan, I'd like to go back to your point about indoor air quality. I say that knowing that you're located down in Eugene, Oregon, and we're up here in the Seattle metro area, and we're all unfortunately dealing with smoke in the air.
Yes.
Can you propose some ideas of how sustainability could protect us from these unfortunate pollutants that we have to now navigate?
So we now have an airtight house. Well, the beauty of that is that smoke cannot easily get into an airtight house. However, we need to have good air also. So if the house is closed up, how do we get fresh air? And with a passive house, the requirement is always that you have heat recovery ventilation. Smoke has created a whole new environment for us, and it's so new that there have been no kind of magic machines developed yet that do all of that together. So we usually now have independent HEPA filtration either attached to our systems that are already in the house, or we do, which is you add on HEPA filtration that is connected to the outdoors and or together inside. And that's what I do. I actually have really good quality air filters in the house that do HEPA filtration. And HEPA will eliminate the particles that are actually dangerous to our lungs. When we control the air that comes in, that's the ideal. We don't want to be in a leaky house that sucks in dust and pollen and mites and pollutants and pesticides, or aerial spray. If you live near a vineyard, for example, they spray, or near a forest logging area. All those things come into your house if your house is leaky. So with the high efficiency buildings, we want to control the air that we bring in.
Suzanne, from the design build side, how does sustainability show up in everyday project decisions, even when a homeowner does not specifically ask for a sustainable home?
A sustainable home actually begins with just efficient space planning and looking for opportunities for cross ventilation or natural movement of the air, because as much as we want to keep our homes tight and we are paying attention to that indoor air quality, there are times where there's opportunities to naturally cross vent the house. I know that's how I live in my home. I have a routine of controlling the air through not just the HRV units that we've included in all the bedrooms as opposed to something centralized. It was just more of a cost-effective approach for me as a solution. So I focused the air quality through the heat recovery ventilation in wall systems for each bedroom. It also meant that in the mornings I would open up the home. I actually, on clear days, not on smoke-filled days, but on clear days, it always felt good to just naturally feel the air move through and then close it up after a certain period of time. And then, so for me, that architecturally meant that I had to look for axes of cross ventilation, or look for areas where we could exhaust high on the north side, some of the heat, for example, so that we're naturally cooling the home as opposed to mechanically cooling the home. I will say, when it comes to passive house design, and Jan can speak to this in much more detail, it is something that you want to talk about with your clients very early on. That is something to plan for in the process as soon as possible, even as early as a site selection, because sun orientation and prevailing winds and other aspects of existing site conditions could play into measures that we would need to take to qualify for a passive home.
I really appreciate what Suzanne just said about the ventilation, because people might think from what I said that a house has to be airtight 24/7, 365 days. That's not the intent of passive house or energy efficiency of any kind. It is to be energy efficient. So when the outside environment is propitious to opening the windows and smelling fresh, cool air in the summer, or some warmth coming in the late spring after the cold winter, for sure open the windows, if you're not allergic to pollen or something like that. The beauty of having the air tightness is that when you do have pollen allergies, or the air is bad, that you can control it. That you keep out the bad air, you bring in the good air, and you exhaust the stale air. And solar orientation is very important, obviously, if we have the opportunity, to have south-facing views or whatever access to the site. But with the beauty of these newer high-performance systems that we have been integrating, for me, myself, since the year 2010, when I got certified, passive house consultant, is that we actually can, if we start early on with the design, with the planning process, we can model the building with a special software. It's called Woofy Passive, and that the Passive House Institute of the United States uses, and we can model the house. And it literally models almost like almost literally every stud, every post, everything that goes into the envelope of the house, all the air infiltration, the equipment that you're going to have, the sizes of the windows, the energy efficiency of the windows and doors and everything. And it then spits out information about the performance, the predicted performance of that house and the carbon emissions of that house. I mean, it's an incredible software, and I'm just so thrilled and passionate about it. And it allows you then to actually tailor some of the systems, some of the window sizes, some of the geometries, some of the aspects of the envelope, the windows and the doors, the amount of energy, of thermal insulation, the amount of air tightness, and the amount of thermal mass inside the building to be optimized, so you don't go overboard on cost with certain things and underperform with other systems. What's great with a passive house consultant is that they've been trained in it. You don't have to go for certification. If that doesn't matter to you, fine, don't do it. I'm not pushing it. It's you, but what's ingrained in me and my body and my soul and everything is the knowledge and the expertise in it, and I can bring that to every project. And Suzanne can bring her knowledge, and you, Shakiba, can bring to all that knowledge you've gained to a non-passive house. So you use the principles that you've learned, you apply them to whatever design we end up doing, whether it's a museum or a school or a house or a DADU. We can apply those and make them effective, efficient, and cost-effective also.
Consider it to be like best practices in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
That we have developed throughout the criteria of these systems of rating. And I will say that the WWOOFie model was so informative in making design decisions because as an architect who loves some expansive views and potentially putting windows where they would otherwise be inconvenient from an energy efficiency perspective, there were informed decisions that we made having referenced the model, the energy model, and we increased insulation, for example, in a particular area in order to meet the overall envelope performance. So there were negotiations of how to mitigate some of that energy loss through the windows in other ways, which I learned so much about while we were referencing the energy models. I was very appreciative of that layer of information that really helped us make informed decisions.
I think good design is very often a result of all kinds of compromises, like thousands of compromises.
How would you explain passive house in simple terms to a homeowner? How is it different from other certifications like LEED, Built Green, or other certificates?
Yeah, Built Green and LEED are kind of point-based systems, so you have to accumulate points. And they almost, I think all of them look at your water efficiency of both the indoor water and then irrigation. They kind of push towards native planting, low irrigation planting, or no irrigation planting. Some will say you lose points if you have lots of big lawns, kinds of things that require a lot of water. They do push for indoor air quality, good non-off-gassing, low VOC materials. Those are all really good factors. Passive house is different in that it focuses very uniquely on the energy efficiency of the house. And the name passive house stems from the original German Passivhaus, which was focused on utilizing the naturally gained interior heat energy to heat the house rather than bringing in a lot more heating energy. So if you could, they said, what if we could live without a furnace? What if we could live without extra heat? Can we live with passively gained energy? So that is through solar heat gains through windows, but also your refrigerator gives off heat, your dishwasher gives off heat, the washing machine and the dryer give off heat. And then other systems exhaust heat, like exhaust fans. So Passive House looked at all of these and said, how can we, instead of throwing this stuff out through the walls, radiating it through windows, radiating it, losing it through walls and infiltration, if we reduced the infiltration and exfiltration of air, we could save up to 30% of the energy. That's the highest heat loss through conventional homes is actually through exfiltration and infiltration, through cracks under doors, through windows. The second one is through radiation loss through the walls, radiative and convective loss through walls and windows. So if we could get rid of those or reduce them, can we have a passively heated house? And that's where the name came from. A quick anecdote, we had a client, we designed our very first passive house in Eugene. It was the second passive house in all of Oregon. And my client called us, and it was snowing outside. We very rarely get snow in Eugene. So there was a foot of snow outside. It was ice cold and everything. And our client called us, and he said, when we went to bed, it was 73 degrees inside the house. And when we woke up, it was 69 degrees inside the house. And that's amazing. 24 hours later, you lose so little heat. There are a lot of very large commercial buildings, commercial meaning residential and banks and other kind of buildings that are now Passive House certified. It's really extraordinary. Actually, it's easier to achieve Passive House certification in large building because the internal volume is large compared to the outside skin, and it's through the skin that we lose heat, right? Mm-hmm. So the smaller the skin, the larger the volume, the slower that heat loss is. So it's actually easier often in a large building. So maybe that should get us to a DADU.
Yeah,
that's a good segue.
Because should a DADU be Passive House or even Passive House certified, it's a different way of thinking with an ADU in so many ways already. And I think we should take it to the point, well, it's not like a regular house. You don't need the whole big system for heating and cooling if you're putting your initial investment into a really cool envelope with really nice overhangs, properly sized windows, properly tuned shading, and exterior spaces and so on. I think an ADU is already more sustainable, typically just because of the size. But if you do a better, more efficient ADU, you're really maximizing the potential of it as being a very comfortable space without spending a lot of money on very high cost systems.
Have you had projects where an owner came in committed to a particular sustainability feature, but after studying the project, you found it was not the best use budget?
Solar panels are like an add-on for me.
Yeah.
Do the things first that you will never be able to touch again. So a high efficiency wall, a well-insulated airtight wall, roof and ceiling, and really good quality windows. And I really, really strongly believe that triple glazed windows are just, whenever at all possible, do that, because a triple glazed window is so much more energy efficient in the total performance of a wall than a double glazed window. I'll ask you a question. What's the point of having an R30 wall when you have an R3 window? Triple glazed windows will cost between 15 and 30% more. Unfortunately, there are very few American manufacturers that make good, affordable triple glazed windows, and we are almost always importing Polish windows, almost always, from pivot windows in Portland. Nowadays, their cost is really good. The only big add-on cost is the shipping cost, which is about $6,000 add-on. So that bumps up the cost. But if we're talking about a $200,000 or $300,000 project, why not spend that extra $6,000 to $10,000? You're never going to replace those windows. So do it now up front. Do the things that you cannot change later on.
Oregon has been ahead of Washington in allowing middle housing, and where homeowners resistant at first and have smaller or more sustainable projects help change those attitudes.
So this is in R1 zoning, so residential single-family zoning. You're now allowed to do more than just single family. So you can do duplex, triplex, quadplexes. You can do village clusters, cottage clusters, and so on. So that it's changing everything. We're way behind the curve as far as housing, supply goes. We're in a crisis. It will take us 10, 15, 20 years to get out of this crisis. There's actually a professor at Washington State University or Washington University who wrote a book, and I've been reading it, and the title of the book is Homelessness is a housing problem. It's lack of housing that causes homelessness. All the stereotypes we have about people who are on drugs or divorced or single parents or whatever being the cause of homelessness, it's not that. It's a lack of housing. There's not enough housing, therefore the price of available housing is much too high. So people can't afford it, and they already, if they're tight incomes, they lose something, they lose their job, bang, they're off, and it's terrible. So there's no affordable housing. So I think finally the states, at least the Western states, are coming around to, we need to loosen up the housing law, the zoning laws. Actually, there used to be redlining too. That was to keep Black people out of neighborhoods. Redlining was what called redlining. So there's all kinds of all those codes that created single family residential R1 zones. Many of them were racist. And so it's really great that all of this is coming apart, and we can now build small houses like DADUs, which are fantastic. Like older people sometimes don't want their big house, but they want to have support. A DADU is an amazing way for a couple or older people who want to downsize and move into the ADU and then make some money by renting out their main house. Or they could be in the main house and they can have a caregiver live in the DADU, or kids can come and live in it. Or, DADUs are really an amazing new opportunity for everybody, for many different kinds of people.
So wouldn't you say that plays into the concept of sustainability? It's social sustainability, and it plays into a sense of equity, or an aspect of allowing for diversity within our neighborhoods and communities to be able to have more of an opportunity to share in our social resources.
Yeah,
it's not just the nuts and bolts of construction or design, but it really is talking about who's living in these homes and how we contribute to society.
I love that aspect. I think that you addressed that. It creates more cultural diversity in our neighborhoods, actually. Income diversity and social diversity sometimes go hand in hand. So I like in the fact that we're kind of doing a little bit of social engineering by changing these zoning codes that allow now more diversity in income, rent, ownership, and all of that.
Jan and Suzanne, thank you both for joining me. I think the biggest takeaway from today is that sustainability is not about adding every possible feature, It is about making thoughtful decisions early, like size, layout, the building envelope, systems, materials, and long-term use. When those pieces work together, even a small ADU or DADU can be more comfortable, healthier, more efficient, and truly built to last. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you in the next episode of Do You DADU.